The charter application is not just paperwork. It is literally the schools and the founding team's first promise to the students and families it plans to serve.
You're listening to the Bold by Choice podcast with Vashanta Harris and Jim Gunner. Real talk about charter schools, from the boardroom to the classroom, powered by the National Charter Schools Institute.
Welcome to the Bold by Choice podcast, where we help educators transform student outcomes by providing real-world strategies, inspiring stories, and insights that empower you to create high-quality learning environments. I'm Vashanta Harris.
And I'm Jim Gunner. This season, we're walking through the life cycle of a charter school, from birth to renewal and even closure. Today, we're going back to the beginning, when the vision becomes a plan. We're talking about the charter application, why it matters, how it sets the tone for a school's success, and how authorizers and founders can co-create a powerful shared vision of quality from day one. Today's special guest is Heather Wendling. She has led this work from every angle, state level, national level, and boots on the ground where she's done direct coaching. Heather, welcome to Bold by Choice.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me. How's your day going?
Fantastic. We are talking about turning dreams into reality. Some people call it the charter application, but I think of it more as how do you help people take their hopes, dreams, and ambitions and turn them into something glorious for kids?
That's right. You know, Jim, Heather and I actually met on the circuit. We're both consulting, and we've actually served on one or two charter app review teams. So there has been times where Heather's been one of my professional girl crushes. So Heather, I'm so excited that you're here on the show with us today.
Never heard you say that before. Thank you so much.
Yes. You know, there's some people in charter space, you're like, I can't wait to be in a room with them. And I got to be in a room with both of you, actually. So it's been really cool.
Well, Vashanta, you know, Heather's got 2 kids, and being a mom's the most important job in the world.
That's right. She's super mom.
They tell me that all the time, that I am their first job.
But I don't know, how do you go to law school and then go to work for Teach for America? Like, that's not on the career path.
No, it's not. And I'm probably still the only person that did it that way, right? The inverse is definitely much the more traditional path. I think it just goes to show that you have to be open to learning experiences, like whenever and however you get them. And that's what happened to me.
I love that. I had a lot of, what do you call them? On-ramps and off-ramps in my career too. So I'm really inspired to see how your journey has shaped up as well. And Jim and I have a chance to get to know you, but I'd love for our listeners to get an opportunity to learn a little bit about who you are. Would you mind doing a little intro for us?
Of course. So I think one of the most formative things about me from my personal background is that I grew up the daughter of 2 immigrant parents from Europe. And I think intentionally and in some ways unintentionally, they placed a huge value on education, but overall just really, really high expectations for every part of my life. And those early lessons have stuck with me through my personal and professional endeavors. School was always my happy place. I had perfect attendance, I think, through at least the 8th grade, because I never wanted to miss a day of school, even when I was sick. But surprisingly, I never considered education as my career path necessarily. So as you had mentioned, I went to law school immediately after undergrad, fully thinking I was going to go probably into some kind of corporate role. But I had amazing clinical learning experiences on campus, where as a student attorney, I represented low-income taxpayers before the IRS, and then also asylum seekers that were petitioning. So those experiences really opened my eyes to careers in the public service. And that felt much more like me than the traditional corporate path. So plot twist, I joined TFA after graduation rather than working for a firm.
Yeah, TFA.
Yeah, there's always 2 degrees of 2 degrees between Teach for America folks in, I think, working in ed reform specifically.
Now, Heather, is that really true? Perfect attendance for 8 years?
Yep. Yeah. I was, even if I had a fever, I think there was even one time I had strep throat and I begged to go to school.
Wow. I bet you had every ribbon. Did you ever get the pizza parties? Like you had the perfect attendance pizza party?
Absolutely. And that was when Pizza Hut was still a thing.
That's
So it
right.
was
I remember
Pizza
that.
Hut pizza parties.
I
Yes.
used to love those pizzas.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
they say winners show up 8 years straight. Like, I'm a baseball guy. You're like Cal Ripken.
Yeah, so since those days, I've spent my career in education. Started off as a special education teacher in Brooklyn, moved into instructional admin coaching roles, and then kind of seamlessly slipped into the authorizing world. It was a really great marriage of my legal background and critical thinking and what I enjoyed about that work, as well as education and serving families. I specialized for many years in the new charter applications process, both from the SUNY side and the applicant side, capacity building, looking at readiness for expansion, all of those things. So I've been really fortunate to work with amazing teams along the way, both my first team at the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, then with my former colleagues at NACSA, WestEd, and now with you guys as the Vice President Professional Services at the Institute, where it's felt really great already to be able to bring all of those experiences together to offer really great services and supports for our clients. So what I'm really passionate about is helping schools and authorizers and boards create systems that really reflect what they care about and that really, very importantly, are workable and practical in real life. So I pride myself on always trying to listen really deeply, building tools that are useful, and keeping kids at the center of those decisions. Jim, you had mentioned before about my two kids. It's almost like a learning lab in your own home, right? When you have children. So one of them is in college, one of them is in high school. They are as different as two children that are biologically related could possibly be. So they have been, lesson number 1 through 100 in reinforcing that there is no one size fits all model for education that's going to serve all students.
Hey, as the father of 7, I thought I knew how to raise kids after 6. And then Natalie came with UP syndrome and she changed my world again. But what a blessing. Parents, being a parent and raising kids is a great lab. And there's real-time feedback. Hey, Heather, I got to tease you. You used authorizer and critical thinking. Does that mean authorizers are critical?
As they need to be. I think that the perfect role for the authorizer, I think, and where the relationship is the most conducive to school success is when the authorizer is like the number one critical friend for every school. Like they want them to succeed, but they know how much hard work it takes and how much detail orientation it takes. So they don't let up on expectations after this first phase of the new charter app.
Just like your parents, high expectations, but they loved you and encouraged you.
Exactly.
Right. I love that analogy.
No, I'm trying to convince authorizers that their role is really to be guardians of opportunity and stewards of possibility. How does that fit with the charter application?
That is a really great segue. So I've always thought about the charter application and I've always communicated it this way with either folks that were in the application phase or that were thinking about it. Because especially when I was working at SUNY, I used to probably spend at least a quarter of my time fielding questions and talking potential applicants through their plans and, troubleshooting, or again, even in those early days, playing critical friend so that they, had to really flex their self-reflection muscles as they even really thought about, building a submission for a new charter app. I think the guardians of possibility, I think that that's a beautiful concept, but we have to make sure that the possibility is not just a list or sort of like a very idealized sense of ideas around what a school, could offer to a community. It needs to be much more akin to a blueprint, very detailed plans. And it also in terms of that possibility and that potential, what is it going to offer to a community? Is it something new? Is it something novel? Who will it serve? And then very critically, do students and families want this as opposed to other possibilities that folks might seek to open in their neighborhood?
So it sounds like you're trying to balance vision and pragmatism.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So let's take that possibility word, right? Like we are all in the work and in the space. And I want to break this down so that anyone who's listening to this podcast really is following what it is we're talking about. And Jim, I love that you put the word possibility out there. And this is coming from, I was at a community event last night in my city in Greenville, South Carolina. And folks were like, what is it that you do? Because the word charter authorizer, that's actually a very niche jargon word, right? And so when I think about what we mean when we say possibility as it relates to the charter application, is that there are literal community groups, teachers, families, parents who may come up with a vision for something that they want to see in a school in their community. And the beautiful thing about the charter world is they can do that, right? They can say, hey, I have this idea, this concept for school. I want to make it real. I want to see it actualized. And the method in which they do that is the application. And so I want to make sure that we're breaking this way, way down, right? So that folks are following along with us. And I love that there's that possibility out there for anyone who can conceptualize something beautiful in terms of a school that could pop up in their community.
So Vashonda, with Heather's expertise, let's get right down where the rubber meets the road, right? So there's a lot of things we could talk about the application and turning dreams into reality, but it's also a process. And it's a process that authorizers have a job to administer, right? So there's an application, it's got questions, it wants budgets, it wants to know about boards and leadership and curriculum and all of these things, including how do you serve special needs students and do it legally. Talk to us about the process. What's a good process? How do you administer it fairly as an authorizer? And how do you navigate the process as somebody that wants to receive a charter by which they can educate kids and get public money to do it?
It is a tough process. And I've never found anyone that would tell you otherwise, nor should they. So authorizers, at the end of the day, at the end of every single day, need to protect students and the public interest. So ultimately, any high quality review process for new charter applications will only result in approvals for schools that have a high likelihood of approving outcomes. And we could discuss potentially in a different podcast about what outcomes those should or could be. But at the same time, authorizers can't set an impossible standard because we know that there's still tons of demand for more quality options. So I think there's some key things. I mean, this could be a really long laundry list of what those key things need to be in order to do all that. But what comes right off the top of my head is being clear about the review process, about who participates in it from both sides, asking questions that seek to understand more about the potential school team rather than just stumping them, which can be harder to discipline yourself to stay on that line. And then providing real feedback are definitely ways to partner with folks and create really kind of from day one that ecosystem of the critical friends, the clear expectations, but then also don't create a dynamic where school leaders or the boards or folks that ultimately run these schools, if they're approved, that they're too afraid to fail or share their challenges with their authorizer. So it is a very tall order to establish all of that at the beginning. But there are some authorizers that are doing that really well.
And when we look nationally, there are processes that vary. There are some variances, but there are some common pieces to this puzzle of application. And so one of those common pieces is the vision and the mission. So how do applications best demonstrate that compelling theory of change in their mission statements and vision statements?
So typically this is the first few sentences that an authorizer or a review panel will ever read from a potential school operator, right? What their mission is, what their vision is, what they're going to offer by this channel. So immediately I always looked at those statements and wanted to know, is it measurable? Is it clear? And if I put my parent hat back on, or if I even think of myself as a student, does the mission tell me what I need to know in order to be interested in learning more about it or enrolling my child at that school? I think a lot of mission and visions can be very, a little fluffy, that don't necessarily get at the absolute priorities of that team. So that's often something that I would probe on and probe around. But around the compelling theory of change, I think what sets folks apart and really, makes authorizers sit up and listen and really lean into that sense of possibility and get really excited about the new charter option is, has that team done a lot of research and due diligence to know what the existing school options in that community already are, so that they're positioning themselves to do something differently, to do something innovative, and then also just prove, not only in this piece of the application, but throughout it, including in the budget, how they're going to execute upon that vision, right? And then there are different pieces of the application, both in the documentation piece, the capacity interview piece, the ongoing communication, between all the parties involved, that give you really important information about their backgrounds, about the leadership and the board composition, and about their past successes and failures, and how that has all really poured into what they're proposing to do.
So Heather, let's zero in on that. You mentioned people writing compelling plan, vision, mission, but people can hire a grant writer. They can use AI. They can make things sound good.
Yep.
How do you dig in and assess the capacity of the founding team to actually do what they say they're going to do?
Yeah, that is where the capacity interview piece is an absolute non-negotiable. Every authorizer in the country that is, potentially reviewing and weighing new applicants needs to have at least one opportunity to talk to folks, face to face. It can be virtual, but I think, really you get a much better sense of the interpersonal dynamics and all of those things and people's personalities and even their level of excitement and commitment to this cause when you're able to sit around a table and ask them questions or see where they light up or see where they're willing to, just accept that there's going to be some challenges along the road in that capacity interview piece. So time is precious for everybody involved, right? Especially because authorizers may well be reviewing numerous applications during any given cycle, but not asking the team to recite their application or not, asking sort of tricky questions just to see if they can, recite the same language they used, but asking them deeper probing questions to clarify, to ask what else they considered, and also to ask them about, lessons learned from their other endeavors in life and how those all have, fed into this application. That is an incredibly important part of this, probably just as much so as all of that written documentation.
Yeah. I'm going to share a story that can go both ways. And Jim, I love you posed that question. I sat on a review team and it was an application that was decent, right? But I had some questions about what some of the elements really meant, specifically as it related to the academic plan. And here's why that capacity interview was super helpful. Once we sat down and we were able to ask our questions, the level of detail and clarity that every one of those founding team members was able to provide to support that application made us say, oh, okay, this group of folks knows exactly what it is that they plan to do. On the reverse, I've seen teams come in and only one person on the whole team is answering all the questions. And so then we're like,
yep.
Did the team work on this? Or like what's going on here? And so some of those practical pieces I think are also like good to highlight because those are some of the things that authorizers are looking for engaging when folks are coming in. It's basically the business interview piece, right? Like I've gotten your business plan. Now I'm going to interview you to see if you're ready for the job. So that's the analogy that I made.
Vashanta, that's key because is there a team or is it one person?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's hard to build an amazing school with just one person, right? And then you got the proverbial bus question, right? So having a team that's knowledgeable, caring, committed, they can overcome a lot of things that a person can't do by themselves.
I think another really key thing that is, it's noticeable also just in your observations, but then also through those conversations during those interviews, are these folks that are going to be comfortable or even able to hold each other accountable? Because it's going to get hard, even if they have a brilliant, inspiring school leader, there's going to be times they have to hold that person accountable. And is that something that they're going to be able to do? Right. And sometimes, depending on where the genesis of the new application or the new school idea started, a lot of times these are people that have personal ties or knew each other from former roles or other jobs or from within their community. So it can be tough to say, would you be able to hold this leader or the board chair or whomever, accountable for a certain set of results. And I think asking that question and seeing those responses, or seeing folks be kind of speechless as they grapple with that, I think has been very telling.
So here's the thing, right? The bottom line of a new charter school is to make sure that students are getting a high quality opportunity at their academics. And that's not negating the other elements of a school. So please hear me when I say that. Those other elements are important, but we're here to be institutions of learning. And the academic plan piece can be a little bit overwhelming. So what's something that has signaled to you the readiness of an applicant group as it relates to their academic plan?
This is, I think, the $84 million question. I think between authorizers, the level of pre-planning or the level of predetermination of all of the academic plan pieces, I think this is what is kind of still in debate if we look regionally and across the country. Some authorizers want every single curricular resource explained, cited, all the research, all the data that supports using that curricular product or that instructional approach for the population that the school intends to serve. They want lesson plan templates. They want the full scope and sequence, all of it, the whole, the entire suite already as part of the application. Then there's other authorizers that focus more on the capacity and the backgrounds of the instructional leadership or the board members, or if there's a leader that's been identified, and really focus more on their ability to identify that strong academic program. I think, like most things, the kind of moderate approach in that middle lane is probably the most appropriate in most situations. In terms of readiness, do not want to hear that, oh, give us the charter and we'll figure out what our curriculum is in the summer before we open, right? That is never the right answer. But having some wiggle room, right, and some flexibility and an orientation towards that flexibility, knowing that even if you study demographics, even if you know where the feeder schools that your students are coming from to come to your school, even when you are armed with like their past performance data, you're still going to learn a lot about the kids that come into your doors. And you need to still have some flexibility and agility to respond to those and adjust your academics as necessary to really meet their needs. So I think that signals real readiness. You have research-based curriculum that you have identified that also really that meshes well with your instructional methodology. Because if you're talking about, off the shelf curriculum, and then you're talking about really deep and authentic project-based learning, there's mismatch there, right? Mm-hmm. So there definitely needs to be alignment. But then I also just look for that experienced school, staff that know you always need to leave maybe 10, 20% of flexibility to make sure that whatever you thought was going to be perfect for your kids is perfect for your kids.
If I'm paraphrasing correctly, I'm hearing you say the form has to meet function, but not absent of the actual humans. And so to have your plan pretty much tight on form and function, but being ready to be nimble so that when your teachers enter the building, when your students enter the building, you're able to adjust quickly.
Absolutely.
Heather, I'm trying to encourage authorizers now to ask a question that goes like this. Why will students want to come and take ownership for their learning? And the reason I'm intrigued by that question is I see so many places where the kids don't want to be at school, the adults don't want to be at school. So I'm like, what's wrong with school? Mm-hmm. And is there some design element that we've been boxed into or we've just assumed is the way school's got to be? Is there something that could be changed strategically, design standpoint, that would actually make people want to be there?
That's a great question. I think that goes to, we see, I think now more than ever, school operators or potential school operators asking and hopefully listening to student input about those very questions, about family input, and about looking at data too that's beyond the academics, right? Looking at attendance, looking at participation in extracurriculars, all of those other indicators that tell you really valuable things about the student's school experience. And then, switching gears accordingly, right? If kids want more real life experiences, if they want more career and college exploration, working that into the academic and the instructional plan.
So let's move that to money, right? So somebody comes in, they've got awesome plan, but they can't make it work financially. How do you assess that in the process as an authorizer?
Yeah, my former boss at SUNY, Susie Miller-Carello, I quote her quite often. She probably doesn't even realize that. One of the things that she taught me early on was, you're looking at the school's proposal. Open up that first page, mission and vision, academic plan, key design elements, what they're telling you that they want to do and how they're going to educate kids. And then in the other hand, you're opening the budget because that really tells you how they're going to educate kids, right? So again, we're looking for alignment between those things, right? Is it realistic that the way that they have deployed funds and the amount of funds that they think they're going to have available, is it enough to buy all that instructional, the resources, the equipment, the staffing model to implement it appropriately? Are those things talking to each other in ways that make sense? What's about realism right now, what we're seeing, I think, is challenges with enrollment, right? Which has a direct hit to schools' funding and their fluidity. And then I think from the beginning of time, just about facilities have also been a challenge for schools. So just having a real handle on, how practical or realistic those calculations and those projections are is really important. And then also, is this a group that their board, that their leader, are they already thinking about contingencies, right? In that capacity interview, a common question might be, all right, we have your budget. It's carefully balanced that you're going to be able to afford to implement that academic plan. What if you are 15% less in enrollment? Or what if a grant doesn't materialize? Or what if you have some massive, capital improvement or, reno that you need to do for your facility so that it works for you? How do you maintain the core elements of your instructional program with less money? And seeing what they say and seeing how far down that road they've planned or thought through, I think is incredibly important, because financials obviously are a key stress point for schools, both in the new startup phase and always into perpetuity.
Yeah. I've seen so many times, and I'm wondering what the statistics are on this. I'm not sure, but so many times the school going from the application phase, they get approved and chartered and they go through that year zero. I wonder at how many contingency plans they made between that span of time and the day they're welcoming teachers, students, and families into the building. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I see that in practice in almost every one of the schools I was intimately involved in. And so having the mindset of like, we're going to have to adjust course often, and having a team that's willing to do that is very much essential.
Heather, to be a winning team, right, you got to be able to attract talent, right? So you got to be able to attract students, you got to be able to attract teachers, you got to have a great leader. You also have to have a board. There's more focus coming onto the boards. Talk us through that dynamic, and how do you, if you're the applicant, how do you put together a board? If you're the authorizer, how do you assess the capabilities of the board?
Great question. And I think folks I think to this day are still learning, because I think it varies very regionally, right? My home state of New York, probably 90+% of our charters are in the 5 boroughs of New York City. There's a deep human capital pipelines there. There's a lot of very experienced board members there, or people that are really ripe for board service. Outside of the city, where the population, is less, folks struggle a lot more, both in terms of attracting the school staffing talent, the leadership talent, and boards too. Because from the board angle, really need folks with strong instructional, and deeper instructional expertise. The legal, the fiscal, fundraising and development is always really key. Folks that know about real estate development, facilities. But then now we're seeing more and more, we also want those community connections, more so even than, sort of big name finance people. We need people that are, connected to the faith-based communities, to parent groups that represent students' disabilities, So now I think the focus has really shifted from not only do we need those core components that will help manage the school as a business as well as an educational entity, but that also will keep that, that pipeline of communication going with different community stakeholders.
Well, we're home to the National Charter School Founders Library, and we love the founders and the grit and the leadership that they bring to it. But it reminds me of the adage, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we're talking about the talent at all levels, including the board. And that's part of the team that allows you to not only get a charter, but to sustain it with excellence.
Well, Heather, I feel like we could really talk about this process with you forever, but I want to bring us to one final question before we wrap up. From everything you've seen, where is the charter application process falling short in real life? Are there enhancements? Are there design elements? Are there changes authorizers should be considering?
You really left the biggest question for last, Prashanta. I don't think there's one answer to that. A few things come to mind. So I think in terms of falling short in real life, I think going back to Jim, how you paraphrased it about balancing vision and pragmatism, we want schools to be innovative, right? We want to offer new things to communities. We want to offer new and exciting things to kids, but also, programs that at their heart are still going to be evidence-based and research-based and likely to prove great results. But I do think that there are a number of authorizers that are so risk averse that it is really hindering the approval of some of those schools that could be doing really great and innovative things, right? So can't always say no, can't require, a team of 6 PhDs from Ivy League schools in order to get a charter, right? So making sure that the charter application process isn't impossible, and where there's room for some creativity, right? If it's a school, if it's a team that has existing schools, even if those schools are in other states, go visit them, see it in person, see the program on the ground. That's going to tell you, I think, more than a couple 100 pages of a charter application, right? Or even if there are folks that propose an idea, maybe they don't have as much K-12 experience as you might expect, but they have great industry experience and great connections, and they can bring a lot of that into the school experience for students. Just having a greater sense of possibility, for that. So I think where it falls short in real life is where authorizers don't allow themselves to really embrace that possibility.
Yeah, that's insightful. I think back to my authorizing days at Central Michigan University, and I say to people, great authorizers want great schools. And so in the application, they're placing bets. And they're placing bets on the groups that they think are going to deliver phenomenal schools. And so how, as an applicant, do you position your paper, your people, your team, where it's like, I'm going to bet on you. I think you're going to win, and you'll do whatever it takes to, legally, ethically, morally win for kids.
Well, this conversation today has been so insightful and so powerful. I love that we are unpacking the charter application. And it's not just about it being a gatekeeping process or application process, but as a real opportunity to shape a school's long-term success. And we talked about a lot of things today, but a couple takeaways I just want to call out is, again, the charter application is not just paperwork. It is literally the schools and the founding team's first promise to the students and families it plans to serve. And it's a really amazing opportunity and possibility for community groups who may have an idea for what could enhance their community by way of a school to initiate that. And then this other piece about co-creation. Authorizers and applicants do have the opportunity to co-create what that quality looks like by asking bold questions and building those shared expectations early through the charter application process. So a quick preview, next time we are actually going to be diving into how to prepare to open. So these are the critical moments between the charter approval and the first day where students are walking into the space. So we'll look at what it takes to turn this vision into reality.
And to our listeners, I've got a challenge for you. If you're thinking about starting a charter school, I want you to go talk to your authorizer or your potential authorizers, not during the application process, not when it's about to start, but in the off cycle. See if you can buy them coffee or lunch, pick their brain. Number 2, go see schools. Ask them, who's your best schools? Who's the schools that launched the most smoothly? Who are the best prepared? Go see them, talk to them, listen to them. You can't raise your game unless you've seen it played at a different level. And so going to see and talk to people is invaluable. But think about your charter application. What type of clarity and encouragement can you provide in that? How can you get the authorizers to say, I want to place a bet on you? And as always, we want you to join the Charter Network. If you're ready to be part of a community committed to excellence in authorizing, in governance, in leadership, we'd love to have you become part of this community.
Well, family, it's been indeed our pleasure. So invite you all to hit subscribe, leave us a review, and we'll see you next time on the Bold by Choice podcast, where leadership, innovation, and impact come to life.